China is making some major moves in the AI game. Yep, and what's crazy is they're doing it with their own tech, no US chips involved. We're talking about huge models and cutting-edge processors made right in China. And with the US trying to block their access to foreign tech, China's like, we got this. So let's break down how China's becoming a tech powerhouse and what it means for the future of AI. Trust me, this is some next-level stuff. China Telecom recently created 2 powerful AI models, which is a big deal because they trained these models using only Chinese-made computer chips. Normally, companies rely on high-end chips from foreign companies, especially ones from the US, like NVIDIA. But due to increasing restrictions on China getting access to these advanced chips, this achievement shows how determined China is to become independent in technology. One of the models, Telechat 215B, has 115 billion parameters, which are like the settings that help AI learn, while the unnamed model has an incredible 1 trillion parameters. These numbers matter because the more parameters an AI model has, the smarter and more capable it is. It means these models are not only complex, but powerful, making China's AI technology competitive with global standards. This is really significant because it shows China can train advanced AI without needing foreign help, especially at a time when getting access to US-made chips is getting harder and harder. So China is super focused on making their own AI models with chips made in their own country. The reason? Well, it's mostly because the US has put a bunch of rules in place that make it harder for China to get the high-tech chips they used to buy from companies like NVIDIA. These chips are basically the brains behind modern AI systems. Without them, it's tough to train powerful AI models. But instead of giving up, China is like, okay, fine, we'll just make our own chips. And that's exactly what they've been doing. By developing their own hardware, China's showing that it doesn't want to depend on foreign technology, especially from countries that might cut off access anytime. It's kind of like how you'd rather have your own phone than borrow someone else's every time. The US restrictions have definitely pushed China to focus on creating its own tech, and now they're working hard to make their AI future-proof, regardless of what other countries do. Telechat 215B and this other mystery model that China Telecom developed are examples of what AI experts call large language models, LLMs. These AI models are trained to understand and respond to language, like how chatbots talk to you. Now, what makes these models special is their size and power. Telechat 215B has 115 billion parameters, which are like tiny settings that help the AI learn and improve. The unnamed model, on the other hand, is a beast with 1 trillion parameters. In AI, the more parameters a model has, the more sophisticated it becomes. Think of parameters as brain cells for AI. More brain cells, more intelligence. So with 1 trillion parameters, this unnamed model is in the league of the most powerful AI systems globally. What makes it even cooler is that China trained it using chips made in China, which proves they can compete with top AI companies globally without relying on foreign tech. These models are not just advanced, they're a sign that China's stepping up its AI game in a big way. Chips affect the speed and efficiency of how AI models are trained. The more powerful the chip, the faster the AI can process data and learn new things. So, by training their models on Chinese-made chips, China Telecom is showing that they've got the tech muscle to build AI at home, even without NVIDIA's fancy hardware. It's like learning to cook a great meal with ingredients you grew in your backyard instead of having to go to a grocery store. It shows self-reliance and skill. The US has placed some tough restrictions on companies like NVIDIA, which sell high-end AI chips to other countries, including China. These chips, like NVIDIA's A100 and H100, are super important for training AI because they're really fast and powerful. Since the US started limiting how much access China has to these chips, it's been a bit of a challenge for Chinese companies that rely on them to create advanced AI models. It's like if you were working on a big project and suddenly couldn't get the best tools, you'd either have to find another way or get stuck. But instead of giving up, Chinese companies started looking for alternatives. They're now trying to build their own chips so they don't have to rely on US companies anymore. The restrictions have pushed China to invest more in its own AI and semiconductor industry, which is why we're seeing companies like China Telecom coming out with these AI models trained entirely on domestic chips. The restrictions may have slowed things down at first, but now China's focused on catching up and, hopefully, getting ahead. Huawei is a major player in China's tech industry, and they've been working on their own AI chips called Ascend. These chips are really important because they're one of the few alternatives China has to NVIDIA's super powerful chips. With US sanctions making it hard for Huawei to do business with American companies, Huawei has been doubling down on creating its own technology. Ascend chips are designed to handle AI tasks, like training big models, and are being tested by Chinese companies as a way to reduce reliance on foreign hardware. Basically, Huawei's Ascend chips are a crucial part of China's plan to become more self-sufficient in AI. By developing chips that are made in China and designed for AI, Huawei is helping the country move away from relying on US tech. A lot of companies in China that used to buy NVIDIA chips are now trying out Huawei's chips to see if they can match the performance. It's all part of a bigger push to make sure China can keep building its AI industry, even if the US tries to cut off access to the latest tech. Besides Huawei, there are other companies in China that are stepping up to build AI technology. One of them is Cambricon, which is a startup that specializes in making AI processors. Cambricon is working on chips that are specifically designed to handle the heavy computing needed for AI tasks. This is super important because, with the US limiting China's access to top-tier foreign chips, Chinese companies need to create their own alternatives. Cambricon is helping to fill that gap. The importance of Cambricon lies in the fact that they're building a domestic ecosystem for AI processors. This means that instead of relying on chips made by foreign companies like NVIDIA, Chinese companies can turn to local chip makers like Cambricon. This not only helps China avoid the impact of US sanctions, but also strengthens the country's tech industry overall. With partnerships between companies like China Telecom, Huawei, and Cambricon, China is slowly building a strong foundation for AI technology that's independent of foreign suppliers. Chinese companies are working hard to develop their own processors because of the US export controls that limit their access to high-end foreign chips. The US government has put restrictions on companies like NVIDIA, making it difficult for China to get the latest and most powerful AI chips. Without these advanced processors, it's tough for Chinese companies to train AI models at the same level as companies in other countries. The main challenge is that building high-performance chips from scratch takes time, money, and a lot of expertise. Chinese companies now have to invest heavily in research and development to create processors that can compete with those from NVIDIA or other foreign companies. It's a race to catch up. But the good thing is that these companies, like China Telecom, Huawei, and Cambricon, are making significant progress. They're developing their own chips that can handle the computing power needed for AI, which will help China become more self-sufficient in the tech world. Chinese companies have had to get creative since they can't easily buy NVIDIA's most powerful AI chips like the A100 and H100. Some companies are turning to older, less powerful chips that are still available, even though they're not as fast as NVIDIA's latest models. Others are testing out Chinese-made alternatives, like Huawei's Ascend chips, or processors from companies like Cambricon. These chips may not be as advanced as NVIDIA's, but they're a step towards self-reliance in AI. A big reason why Chinese companies are doing this is to avoid being slowed down by US restrictions. If they can build their own AI models using domestic chips, they won't have to worry about sanctions or export controls as much. It's not an easy switch though, because Chinese chips are still catching up to NVIDIA in terms of power and efficiency. But the important thing is that they're making progress, and in the long run, this could help China's AI industry grow without being dependent on foreign tech. This breakthrough shows that China is making huge strides toward becoming more self-reliant in AI and technology. By successfully training large AI models using only Chinese-made chips, China has proven that it doesn't need to rely on foreign tech, especially from countries like the US. This is important because the global tech industry is competitive, and with countries like the US imposing restrictions, China has to find its own path forward.